century. It's to Jenkins, to Drew for the win. Good! He did it! Bryce Drew did it! Valpo has won the game! A miracle!
Welcome and anchor down from the Vanderbilt campus. You are listening to the JT and Zeek on West End basketball season preview. That recording you just listened to was the broadcast of Bryce Drew's game-winning shot over Ole Miss in the first round of March Madness 1998. That game winner has been dubbed the shot, and we are confident that Bryce Drew can bring some of that magic to Memorial Gymnasium.
It's not often that you get to introduce a new basketball coach for your men's team, and it's even more rare that you reel in a hire as special as Bryce Drew. For that reason, we'll start with a little history lesson and analysis on our new leader. Bryce Drew, he spent 5 years at Valpo. In his time there, he averaged 25 wins per season, won 4 Horizon League titles in those 5 years, and in 3 of the 5 years, he won Horizon League Coach of the Year.
He's been great as a coach. He was also great as a player. He's the most decorated player in Valpo history, and he played 6 years in the NBA. He was also the 16th pick overall in the 1998 draft. Furthermore, he believes in Vanderbilt. He knows this is a school that he can bring to the top, and he reportedly rejected many big-time offers before accepting the Vanderbilt one, and he even rejected the Georgia Tech one last season. Many times he's been caught saying that it would take a great job to steal him away from Valpo, and I guess Vandy was considered a special enough place for him to come. And he also comes from a family in which basketball runs through the blood. His brother Scott coaches at Baylor. His dad, Homer Drew, was the coach at Valpo when he played. And he's a man of very high character. He's very sincere and affable, soft-spoken. He's always smiling. He's clearly a player's coach first. He's been quoted saying, "For myself, the person is more important than the result. We're going to recruit families. We're going to recruit players that want to be a part of our family here. That's how we live our daily life, and that's how we treat our team. I think when people sign on to come here, they know they're coming to be more than basketball players. They're coming to be cared for and develop into men." So that really just fits in with the Vanderbilt model.
Yeah, Vanderbilt is a top 3 or 4 SEC men's basketball job, and Bryce Drew is glad to be the new man in charge. As Jimmy said, he is a man of high character, but that's only part of the equation. Bryce Drew for Valpo last season, his team had some really impressive stats. His team was 9th out of 351 D1 teams in scoring defense and 7th in rebound margin. Compare that rebound margin to Vandy. Vandy's rebound margin was 148th out of 351 teams. Keep in mind, Vandy had 3 7-footers on the team. Bryce Drew's tallest guy was 6'9", and his team still rebounded with enough intensity to make them 7th out of 351 teams.
Yeah, Bryce Drew was working with 2-star recruits for the most part at Valpo too. Coming to Vandy, we're very optimistic that with better recruits, he's going to work a lot of magic. But let's get into the roster, starting with who we lost from last year. And it all starts with the 2 first-round picks. First, Wade Baldwin, who went 17th to the Memphis Grizzlies, is currently averaging 4 points and 4 assists, as well as 2 steals for the Grizzlies. Then Damian Jones, who went 30th to the Warriors.
I know it's a small sample size, but Wade's also shooting 67% from 3 so far on the year.
Mm-hmm.
But Wade and Damian, they made up 37% of Vanderbilt's scoring last year, and it felt like even more.
Yeah.
Wade would have the ball in his hands for probably about 50% of the time on offense. He averaged 14 points a game, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, and Damian averaged 14 points and 7 rebounds. So their production will definitely be missed.
Yeah, definitely integral parts of last year's team. We also lose a few smaller pieces such as Josh Henderson, Carter Josephs, and Nate Watkins. Hendo especially provided lots of depth at the center position. He was averaging 10 minutes per game. He'll be missed, as will his 3-quarter court shot. And overall, we lose about 39% of our minutes played from last year. That's a decent chunk. We also lose 51% of our assists, 43% of our points, and 37% of our rebounds. So there's a lot to replace. And with that, lots to replace, but we have a few new people coming onto the team that hopefully can fill in some of that void. And let's start with the new freshman.
Yeah, Cleavon Brown, he's a 6'8", 220-pound power forward from Winston Churchill High School in San Antonio, Texas. He'll be wearing number 15 for Vanderbilt. This is actually the 4th year in a row we've gotten a commit from Texas. Stalling built a pipeline there. He's ranked the 70th best player in the nation and the number 1 power forward from Texas by Scout. He was also a 4-star on 24/7 and on Rivals. He picked Vandy over Auburn. Auburn's getting in some 5- and 4-star recruits each year now, it seems. He picked Vandy over Auburn, Kansas State, Notre Dame, ACC powerhouse, Texas, Big 12 powerhouse, and SMU. As a junior in high school, he averaged 17 points, 9.5 rebounds, 3.5 blocks per game, and he's a really good post player. And he averaged nearly 19 and 8 during his senior campaign, shooting over 60% from the field. In watching his highlights from high school, it seems like he has a post game that's already pretty developed for a guy his age. We're going to be looking for him to be able to contribute on offense right away, and he has a reputation of always smiling, which is good to replace Damian, because Damian, no matter how the game was going, no matter how bad he was getting screwed by the refs, he always had that big smile on his face. And Cleavon Brown was actually criticized for not being tough enough earlier in his high school career. He hit the gym, he toughened up, and guys know him now as a very tough, gritty player. And in watching his highlights, we've also noticed his ability to dish it to other guys on the perimeter. He's a very good passer.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Cleavon Brown can do. You really covered it all with him. Let's talk about Peyton Willis. He's a 6'4" combo guard from Fayetteville High School in Arkansas. First thing that stands out about him is his size. He is a full 6'4". He's almost as tall as Cleavon Brown. We've seen them standing together. Great size for a point guard. He picked Vandy over Dayton, and at Vandy, he'll be wearing number 1. In terms of high school stats, his junior season, he averaged 16 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and 1.5 steals, while shooting 45% from the three-point line. His senior season, he really went about improving his passing game, and he increased his assists from 3.5 to 6.5 per game, while also shooting 42% from the three-point line. What we've noticed while watching his film is he's a great catch-and-shoot player from the three-point line, very fluid in shooting mechanics. And he looks to have solid handles overall, especially going to the rim. Good passer. He's not Wade Baldwin. He doesn't have the handles of Wade Baldwin, but he's probably the most or the closest to a true point guard on our team, and he has pretty good vision, it looks like. Also, we really like his Twitter handle, @UnlimitedRange0. If his range is actually unlimited, he's going to be a fun guy to watch. And then one more thing to mention, we have Larry Austin Jr., who's joining the team. He's a transfer from Xavier. He's going to sit out this season due to transfer restrictions, but after this year, he'll have 2 years left of eligibility. He's a 6'2" point guard.
Yeah, talk about Brown and Willis as a combination for a little bit. We know they're Kevin Stallings recruits, but we really like what they both bring to the table. As Jimmy said, Willis might be the most fit player on the roster to become a true point guard. That 6.5 assists up from the 3 that he had his junior season, that really stands out to me. And Brown to just give us some depth inside. Really like these two guys coming in. I think they're both going to contribute this year. Yeah,
and we definitely need them to contribute. Given what we lose from last year's roster, there's lots of room for these guys to get ample playing time and to contribute to this team early. If Peyton Willis can be a true point guard and he can pass as well as we hope he can, as well as sink his easy three-pointers, it's easy playing time for him. Cleavon Brown, he's a true big man. He's not huge. He's probably 6'6", maybe 6'7", but he may be one of those guys that plays bigger than his size. If he can play that James Siakam role, he'll be playing tons of minutes for us.
That'd be great.
And so those are the additions to this year's team. But what about the key returners? We return a decent amount of talent from last year's team, and the first person you have to think of when you think of Vanderbilt basketball is that tall computer science nerd from Lantana, Texas, Luke Cornett.
Yeah, you definitely notice it when Luke Cornett walks into the dining hall. He's so tall. He's listed at 7'1", 250. We think he might be up to 7'2". He's displayed remarkable improvements every year while at Vanderbilt, growing significantly as a player and growing in height too. He averaged only 4 points and 2 rebounds his freshman year, improved that to 9 points, 3 rebounds, and a block per game his sophomore year. Then out of nowhere, becomes one of the toughest players in the game, averaging 9 points, 7 boards, and 3 blocks. And before the season last year, Kevin Stallings said that he was our best defensive player on the roster. After watching his first 2 years, we thought that was just another ridiculous Kevin Stallings statement. Cornett proved that he is the best defensive player on our team, great at guarding the post, and we're really glad to have him back.
Yeah, it's extremely impressive how much he was able to improve on the defensive front and as a rebounder. Going into last season, the big talk and the big hit on Luke Cornett was the guy's 7'1" and he can't rebound, he can't defend. He's pretty much a wing player with a center's height. Now he's a center with the center's height. He can still play on the wing, he can still hit shots, but you never really see players go from 3 rebounds a game to over 7 and from 1 block a game to 3. That just doesn't happen. There's no way to predict that, but unbelievable improvement on his part. He also exemplifies every characteristic that Vandy seeks in its student athletes. He's very intelligent, outgoing, and he immerses himself in student culture. I actually played him in an intramural softball game. He did hit a bomb in it. And in terms of the draft for this upcoming year, he's currently ranked the number 48 draft prospect for the 2017 draft. Starting with you, what do you predict for Cornett this year? I know last year we talked about how his potential ceiling is Frank Kaminsky. Do you think he could realize that this season?
Cornett makes a jump like he did from his sophomore to junior year. If he makes that size of a jump again, he's a lock to be first-team All-SEC, and he'll be in the conversation for SEC Player of the Year. Now, as we said, that's a big jump to make. So even if he's just a little bit better than he was last year, he'll still be one of the best players in the conference. And you ask, can he be like Frank Kaminsky? Frank Kaminsky was a beast. He could take people off the dribble, got a lot of rebounds like Luke already does. He's added that part to the game. So the one difference between Luke and Kaminsky for me, the ability to drive. And before he got hurt last year, Luke showed me that ability, that he actually might start taking some people off the dribble. So if he improves that aspect of his game, I think Cornett can be a really, really good player this year.
Yeah, and he's already proven that he can add dimensions, he can add layers to his game. Most players aren't capable of doing that. With his work ethic, he can. And so, yeah, the sky's really the limit with him. We could see anything from a slightly improved Cornett to a National Player of the Year contender. Let's transition into talking about the other player that made exceptional improvements from 2 years ago, and that's Jeff Roberson.
Jeff Roberson, definitely our most complete player. He'll be expected to play the 4 this year and will be our second leading rebounder, turning behind Luke. He averaged 9 and 6 last year, up from the 5 and 3 his freshman year. And his freshman year, he was probably the least impactful guy from his recruiting class. You had Wade, you had Shelton Mitchell, you had Riley LaChance and Matthew Fisher-Davis, who we'll talk about. But Jeff seemed like the worst of those 5, and the tides really turned last year. Him and Wade really led the team. Roberson, a great wing defender, led the conference in 3-point percentage, has a really, really nice stroke, can drive to the basket, can really guard, outside of maybe the center position, he can guard the 1 through 4. He can guard anybody. I'm not worried about him having to play the 4. And Roberson is one of our best returning players.
Yeah, like you said, he's our most complete guy, best all-around player. He shot 49% from the field last year and 44% from 3, as well as 83% from the line. Extremely efficient, intelligent player. And other than free throw percentage, his percentages were pretty much identical his freshman year, so it's fair to assume that from the three-point line and field goal percentage-wise, he's going to be efficient again. The big question I have concerning Roberson is how will he fare playing against 4s defensively this year? He's going to be playing a few people that are bigger than he is. Think he'll be able to hold his own?
I really don't worry about that at all with Roberson. You see him around campus, he's added even more muscle. And last year, even though Damian would often guard the 4, Roberson was better at it, even though he was 6 inches shorter than Damian was. And I'm really excited about this small ball lineup. The small ball lineup works when you have a 4 that can pass, dribble, shoot the ball, and defend small guys and big guys, and that's exactly what Jeff Roberson is.
For sure. Let's transition into talking about the three-point specialist, Matthew Fisher-Davis. It seems like the improvement he made from his freshman year to sophomore year went somewhat unnoticed, but he did step up, and he hasn't really gotten much credit for it. His freshman year, he averaged 7 points per game, shooting 40% from the three-point line and 71% from the free throw line. Last year, he increased those numbers to almost 10 points per game, 45% from 3 and 75% from the line. With Fisher-Davis, what you see is what you're going to get. You get a lanky shooter that can occasionally rebound or block. He's more of a shoot off of the pass guy. He's not going to create his own shots. But, I mean, his role with the team could potentially increase this year. He's somewhat of a one-trick pony, but, I mean, the three-point shot is incredibly important, especially in college basketball. In terms of how he's perceived nationwide, he is considered the 41st best junior according to Draft Express for this year's draft class if he were to become draft eligible or if he were to decide to join the draft. But that kind of seems unlikely given that the 41st best junior tends not to be drafted. You never know what will happen, though. Last year, Wade Baldwin really moved up the ranks in terms of draft prospects. Anyways, though, getting back on topic, we have two quick questions on Fisher Davis. I'll ask you first. Does Fisher Davis really have to improve for this team to be as good or better than we were last year?
I'm not going to say that he has to, but if he does improve, it would help a lot. It definitely would. Most people going into the season project Fisher Davis to be our leading scorer. We already know what he is from three. If he spots up and he's open, he knocks it down all the time, has one of the prettiest shots we've ever seen. But one thing you touched on, he really doesn't take people off the dribble. He also doesn't really hit twos. For him, it's either three or dunk. That's a big gap in his offensive game, and he needs to fill that out to be a more complete player and to help this team. And a whole other aspect of the game that he lacks on is defense. Sometimes it seems like an effort thing. Sometimes it seems like he's trying to let guys go by him so then he can try to block. We need him to rebound. We need him to guard. And even if he doesn't get any better on offense, if he starts to play defense, he can be a lot more effective player as a whole.
Yeah, he's one of the tallest guys on the team. He has really long arms. He should be a good defender. Hopefully, Bryce Drew can instill a little more fire in him defensively. I just have one more quick question on Fisher Davis. Do you think it's possible that his role shrinks this season?
I mean, anything is possible. We saw the step back that Riley LaChance, the guy we're going to talk about next, took from his freshman to sophomore year. We have a lot of two guards. We have a lot of wings on this roster. So, yeah, his role definitely could shrink. Do I expect it to? No. I think Fisher Davis, behind Luke and Roberson, is probably our third best player. I think he's going to play a lot. I think he's going to be big for us. I think he'll probably put in over 12 points a game. But it definitely could shrink. So I mentioned Riley LaChance. He had a really good freshman year, shooting 44% from the field, 39% from three. Very efficient player. Averaged 12.3 points per game. 88% from the line. Last year, just seemed like he wasn't confident or he was just off pretty much every single game. He was down to 7 points, playing 10 fewer minutes, had the same amount of turnovers playing fewer minutes, more turnovers per minute, and he seemed lost out there at times.
Yeah, Riley really went from a fan favorite to someone who became somewhat irrelevant on the Vandy squad. Now this year, he's going to be expected to do more. Hopefully that helps him feel like the man, makes him feel more confident shooting shots and hitting those shots. Last year, Wade Baldwin really, like you said, he had the ball about 50% of the time. That may have made Riley LaChance feel somewhat like a sidekick, and maybe he's just not able to function as well and play as well in that role. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But one question with Riley is, what do you expect? Closer to freshman Riley or closer to sophomore Riley?
That's a tough question. I hope closer to freshman Riley. Realistically, it'll be something in between. The main thing is he's going to have to play some point guard. We haven't completely went into that yet. We still have a few guys we want to discuss, but there aren't any few true point guards on the team. The guy who is the closest to it is a true freshman. So I'd really like to see Riley's handles improve, see him turn it over less, be able to drive more, and revert to his freshman self.
Yeah, for sure. And let's talk about a few of the other role players. Let's start with Nolan Kressler, someone who has pretty similar playing style to Riley LaChance. I'd say those two are probably the best at creating their own shots on the team. We don't exactly know what Bryce Drew's, offensive philosophy will be, whether we're going to need someone that can create shots off the dribble or not. But you got to think between Riley and Kressler, we really need one of the two to improve this season.
Yeah, Kressler was a beast at Cornell. Last year, he really didn't do anything. Put him in the same boat as Riley. He looked lost out there. There was no confidence in his shot. He only shot 27% from three, which is awful for a D1 shooting guard. If one of them could be good, that would definitely help. I'd prefer it to be LaChance because I think he has a better shot of playing the point, but Kressler being able to put in some quality minutes would help the team too.
Yeah, and Kressler has decent size too for the position and could be a good defender with that size.
He has good hops, good athleticism, and a guy who has the best hops, best athleticism by far who I haven't talked about yet, I'd put him in that conversation of being really good at creating off the dribble too. Joe Toye. This might be the X factor.
Yeah, Joe Toye, he only played 9 minutes per game last year. He sometimes looked like a freshman, but you want to know why he looked like a freshman? Because he was. He always looked like he was just one day away from being a great player, and we're hoping that this year he realizes his potential. He averaged just under 4 points per game last year, but he's a guy that can easily get to the rim. He's going to put up some posterizing dunks on the season, hopefully reach the SportsCenter top 10 a couple of times.
Yeah, every game we went to when Joe Toye was in, we were saying 2 or 3 years from now, this guy is going to be a beast. Joe Toye, if he realizes his full potential, could take over the conference by his junior or senior season. And one thing he doesn't get credit for, he's actually a pretty good shooter. He knocked down 3 threes when open in the corner that last game of the year against Tennessee, shot 43% from 3. That's just another guy who can shoot.
Yeah, Joe Toye, like you said, he might be the X factor. Let's move on to the next guy, Cameron Justice. Early last season, or even before the season, we did not expect anything from him. We honestly thought he would redshirt. In those first few games, he shocked us. He played extremely well, possibly the most pure shot on the team, either him or Matthew Fisher-Davis. Justice, he averaged only 3 points per game last year, but he's a guy that early on the season looked great, and as the season progressed, he kind of shrunk. What do you expect from Justice?
Yeah, Justice kind of had a lingering groin injury for most of the season last year. Like you said, he was really, really good at the beginning, has that quick release shot, good from the free throw line, shot around 83%, shot around 40% from 3. And it always felt like Justice also was really, really close to being really, really good. And we hope him being healthy will help him out a lot. And Justice also a guy who could play the point. He's pretty much a more raw, less developed, but a more athletic Riley LaChance.
With a better shot, too.
With a better shot, better handles. So Justice is a guy who could get time at point, too.
For sure. And let's go over some possible lineup combinations for this year. We've come up with 2 of them. You want to go with the first one?
Yeah, possible lineup combinations. We think that this is the most likely starting lineup. Riley LaChance at the 1, Justice at the 2, MFD at the 3, Roberson at the 4, and Cornette at the 5. This is a small ball lineup, but we have 5 guys out here who are all well above average shooters, all 5 guys who could each shoot 40% on the season. That'd be really hard to defend.
Yeah, the second possible lineup is a little bigger. It has LaChance at the point still, Fisher-Davis playing shooting guard, Toye at the 3, Roberson at the 4, and Cornette at center. Get a little more size in that, but for the most part, it's the same. You still have LaChance, Roberson, Cornette, and MFD. It's just switching Justice and Toye.
Yeah, these are both lineups that we're going to see.
Yeah.
Not sure how much it matters who starts. But yeah, one guy we haven't mentioned after doing the starting lineups, because we don't think he's in that conversation, but might actually be the most important person on the team. He looks like Superman, Jerry Baptiste.
Mm-hmm. He looks just like Superman, a.k.a. Dwight Howard.
Yep.
Exact size, same number, ripped out of his mind. We're going to need him to play backup center this year, and at the very least, he's going to provide a defensive presence that we otherwise would not have. Whether or not he's, polished on the offensive end is a question. He probably won't be, but that's all right. We need blocks out of him. We need a good defensive play. I've actually heard he's pretty good at shooting, not great at dribbling. Hopefully we can get the ball to him in the paint for some easy baskets.
I want to see him throw down some power dunks. I don't care if he gets teed up and hangs on the basket for a couple of times because it'll be really cool to see. But saying that, I also don't really care if he scores a single point the entire season. He needs to be able to come in and guard when Cornette's out of the game, not rack up too many fouls, guard, rebound, play defense. And if he does that, we'll be happy with him in his redshirt freshman year.
And not rack up turnovers also. And let's talk about the point guard position a little bit more. We got Peyton Willis, who I fully expect to be the backup point guard. Any possibility he could come into the starting role at any point this season?
Oh, definitely a possibility, definitely. I don't see that right off the bat. But Peyton Willis, like as we said, he's a great shooter, great handles, and probably the closest thing we have to a point guard. The point guard equation seems to have 3 guys in it. Riley LaChance, who probably has the lowest ceiling of the 3, but also might have the highest floor. Cameron Justice and Peyton Willis. Look for those guys to be running the point. And we've even heard Matthew Fisher-Davis might get a shot at it. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but be interesting to see.
I've never seen Fisher Davis dribble the ball down the court. Yeah,
or dribble the ball more than twice, I think, in a row.
Yeah, you usually see him once and then pass it. Anyways, next big question. This is something that's really been looming over Vanderbilt basketball the past 2 seasons. Do we start winning close games? We only had 2 wins within 5 points last year. We technically only had 1, but one of the games went into overtime. So even though it was a 6-point game, we'll count that as under a 5-point game. So 2-6 last year in games decided within 5 points. 1-9 the season before. Does that end?
There's 2 things I believe that contribute to this. 1, coaching. Check that off the list of things that we changed. Kevin Stallings is gone. He had a reputation for blowing close games. It was frustrating. Our team really we're a couple bounces away from being a 5 or a 6 seed. We ended up in the play-in game. Even the year before that, even if we went 500 in our close games, we would have made the tournament with that freshman-heavy team. Second part of the equation, having a clutch guy who could put the ball in their hands at the end of the game, like Michigan State's Denzel Valentine, somebody like that can take the big shot at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, last year's team was really defined by underachievement. There's a reason why Ken Palm ranked us extremely well. It's because the team was good and we should have been winning more games, but we just lost every single close one. And like you said, that's the difference between being good and being bad. The new coach with Bryce Drew, we really should be winning more of those. It's almost impossible not to. Let's talk a little bit about the schedule for this upcoming season.
Yeah, we open up on Friday, November 11th, 10 days from today on CBS Sports Network. Hopefully you all get that. Against Marquette at a neutral site. Marquette very similar to us in terms of record and performance last year. That'll be an interesting one to see where our team is at.
Mm-hmm. We also have Belmont for the second game, a team that we've always been saying we want to face. It's right down the street. Good basketball team. Should be a rival of ours. We're glad that Bryce Drew isn't afraid to face a tough out-of-conference opponent in Belmont.
Yeah, I think Stallings was afraid to face them. He didn't want to lose. Last year we had a really hard out-of-conference schedule. We had Kansas, we had Baylor, we had Purdue, we had Dayton. This year we have Dayton again, but the rest of it isn't quite as daunting. We'll face Butler, we'll face Minnesota, Dayton, and Iowa State as the big conference or big name teams besides Belmont in our out-of-conference.
Yeah, extremely manageable. And then conference play starts December 29th at LSU. The biggest in-conference games, you have Kentucky twice, you have Florida twice, Tennessee twice as usual. The home Kentucky game is January 10th, and Zach and I are looking forward to storming the court again on that day.
Hopefully Kentucky number 2. It lists them as here on the ESPN schedule, whichever preseason poll they're using. Hopefully they're number 1 when we play them. In addition to Kentucky, Tennessee, and Florida, we also have Arkansas and Texas A&M twice this year. Our strength of schedule should be pretty decent again. Texas A&M, Florida, and Kentucky are projected to finish as the top 3 teams in the conference.
Yeah, so not too daunting. Given this schedule and what we anticipate for this season, what would be your best prediction for this year? Your ceiling and your low ball prediction?
I'm going to start with the ceiling. The ceiling is the second or third best team in the SEC behind Kentucky, which would land us anywhere from a 4 to probably an 8 seed. I'll say the ceiling, 4 or 5. 4 or 5 seed. Last year, I thought the ceiling was a 2 or a 3. This year's team, slightly less talented, first year with a new coach. The floor, barely going 500 in conference and scraping into the NIT. Most likely scenario, I think we go to the first 4, just as we did last year, but we do it with less talent. It's less frustrating to watch, and we'll be excited about years to come with Bryce Drew.
It's amazing how much worse this roster looks and how we can still expect this team to, probably be one of the last 4 in. As for my ceiling, I'd actually say it's a little higher. Given that Kentucky's inconsistent, you never know. We could be the best in the SEC. That does require Luke Cornett to be a National Player of the Year contender. It requires Riley LaChance to be back to his freshman form, maybe even better, and pretty much everyone to hit their ceiling. So that's unlikely, but it is a possibility. As for the floor, I'd also put my floor a little lower, and so the range for this year's team, I'd say, is a little greater for me than it is for you. I could see us being just a little below, the midway point in the SEC, a little below average. It's a relatively young team, new coach. It's hard to know exactly what to expect.
Yeah, Luke Cornett needs to stay healthy. If there's one guy we need to play big and play well, and stay healthy the entire year, it's Luke Cornett. And as you said, if he turns into a player of the year candidate type player, it's hard to stop a guy who's 7'2", can dribble, shoot, pass, rebound, defend, and do it all.
That sums it up. 10 days until the Marquette game and 2 weeks until the home opener against Belmont. Zach and I will be in the front row slamming the court. We cannot wait for it. We hope to see every single one of you there. And with that, anchor down.